So I'm diving and got all these friends, right? And I'm Southern Regional Rep. So I get a call from a young lady. Her name is Cluna Eberell, who's producing a documentary. Could you see that?
Yes, sir. The Guerrero Project.
Right. Producing a documentary called the Guerrero Project. Right. And she says to me, Mr. Stewart, do you know any black divers? I said, do I know any black divers? I'm a regional rep for that. What are you talking about?
You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is. Only got no ohs.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today on the journey towards self-mastery. Our next guest is the co-founder of Diving with a Purpose, an international organization that works to find and record underwater slave shipwrecks all over the world. He's also the co-founder of the Tennessee Aquatic Project, which uses diving as a tool to teach and inspire young people of color. Diving with a Purpose was featured in the National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. It has been part of multiple documentaries, including Into the Depths with National Geographic and the 6-part series Enslaved, starring Samuel Jackson. He's also part of the National Association of Black Scuba Divers and was named Sea Hero of the Year in 2018 by Scuba Diving Magazine. Let's welcome today Mr. Kenneth Stewart to the program. Mr. Stewart, it's a pleasure having you on, man.
Hey, man, thank you for having me, man. It's an honor to be on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the work that you're doing. It is very interesting work. And when I first discovered Diving with a Purpose, it was actually listening to NPR. And they were talking about the work that you guys were doing and everything. And it made me think about like conversations I've had in the past with people that's like, well, like this whole slavery thing, like, you know, conspiracy theorists that are like, there's I'm sure you've heard this, right? There's never.
That first question that you presented to me, no, I hadn't heard that one.
I've heard it from multiple people. People like, well, you know, where are these slave ships? You know, where they saying like these transatlantic slave ships, where are they? Like, and people are like, well, this never existed, and you know, the slaves that they got were already here, and they didn't go to Africa to get slaves. And I've heard this from people. You know, there's no evidence of any slave ships, so it made me think about that. And then people were like, well, how did they even fit them in there? How did they fit all those slaves in there? And to be able to travel that far with these wooden boats, like, get out of here. That didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? So you've been doing the work for decades. So what would you say to those people that are like?
Well, again, for those folks who kind of say that didn't happen, then you don't believe any part of history. You couldn't, right? So we know the African diaspora took part for 400 years because the Europeans kept good notes, so to speak, right? The English, well, the African diaspora actually started with Portugal. So Portuguese, the English, and most of Europe took part in the African diaspora. In other words, they built the ships, took them to different parts of the African continent, and transported the captive Africans here to the Americas. Right? They built, of course, they had good ships, they had great ships. But they brought a lot of the captive Africans over under inhumane conditions, right? And subsequently, a lot of them did die, right? And unfortunately, when the Africans were captured, nobody wrote their names down, so on, so on, so on. So when they arrived here to the different ports of America, they gave them names other than their African names. So there was no way to document who came over, right? But it's a known fact that, like I said, all the European countries, or most of them, kept good records of the number of voyages, the number of ships that came over. Your insurance companies, right, have documented the ships that came over because they insured the ship owners, right, that if they lost their captive Africans, they would pay. So this is all documented, right? So if you don't believe that, You don't believe anything about history.
Mm.
So there's nothing I could do to convince you, but I do know the African diaspora took place.
Good point. Good point.
In
Okay.
fact,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think we are descendants of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you did, because I have traced my history back, I haven't been able to trace it back to Africa, but I've gone as far as my family's from Barbados, so I've gotten as far as Barbados, and I know my lineage from Africa. So my point to all that is, for those naysayers, I suggest that I guess now you could Google it, right? But go to the European countries, right, or research the European country, and you will find out that yes, they documented it well, and they told the story of all the ships that came over.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Another thing I hear a lot from the Black community as well is, here we go again. Like this whole slavery thing, this slavery story. Why are we, still on this? And why are we focusing on slavery? There's more of our history than just slavery. So what do you say to that, and why?
Well, and to be honest with you, I was in that mindset too until 25 years ago. Let's talk about something else. But history, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And if you are paying attention to what's going on these days, we are regressing back, right? Supposedly all of the accomplishments that we've made over the years, this group of folk that's in power is doing away with it. We no longer have what we call affirmative action, whether you believe it or not, right? Diversity, inclusion, and was it DEI? Right? Is diversity, inclusion, and whatever it is, DEI, right? It's going away, right? A lot of the colleges are doing away because the Supreme Court has kind of just squashed all that. So again, we're going back to the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, right? Because we have not learned from our history, right? So the mindset that we have now, I think has to change. And it's an old adage, right? And just think about it. Just think about it, right? If you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I'm just going to use a good example, which I think is an example. I hope I don't step anybody's toes. But Israel has forgotten what the Germans did to them because they're doing it to the Palestinians. They forgot their history. Now, it's a little bit more involved in that. But technically, if you look at it, they have forgotten their history because the Germans did it to them and they're doing it to the Palestinians.
Good points. Good points. Speaking of history, I want to dive into your history a little bit before we get into diving with a purpose.
Okay.
So I know you grew up in the concrete jungle in the Bronx.
Did. I'm a city boy.
Yes, sir. So can you walk us through life?
Yeah, I'm a New Yorker, man. I was born in Harlem. My sister was born in Harlem Hospital. I was born in Metropolitan Hospital, and at that time it was on an island. And now it's on 99th Street. But I was born there, and grew up in Harlem up until 56, I think. And then my parents moved uptown to the Bronx, man, in the Bronx, in the Northeast Bronx. And that's where I moved up. I was 12. Moved uptown. And man, it was an awakening to me. I have to remember, I moved from Harlem, right? I lived in the Polo Ground houses, which is across the street, where the Rucker tournament is? Right across the street from the Rucker tournaments on Caddy Corner. So I grew up there, and it's Harlem, man. And I'm a city boy. I moved up to Bronx. It's like moving to the country, right? Because uptown, we had chickens. They had chickens and cows and all that. Man, I called my partner. I said, "Man, this is the country." It was only like a half an hour on the subway, but it was a whole different experience, man. And I loved it, man. I loved it. I was always a adventurous guy, man. I ride my bikes all day. But even when I was living in Harlem, man, I was never afraid to go anywhere, and I was 12 years old, man. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, and I loved it, man. And I told you, so now, and I go back, and it's 50 something years later, and it's completely changed, right? When I grew up, the neighborhood was 90% Italian, right, with other ethnic minorities up there. But now it's I don't even think it's 1% Italian. It's all black.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changed. So that's where I grew up. But I was telling folks, so like I said, I was a very outdoorsy guy. I mean, I played every sport that you could think of. I played, right? Was not good at any of them, but I played. Right. The sport that stood out to me most was track. I ran track when I was in high school, and actually I ran against um, the brother who went to the Olympics, right? And put his fist up.
Oh, is that Tommy? Tommy?
No, Tommy, no. I think of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in high school together,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I ran against him. He dusted me. So, but yeah. So I grew up there in the city and loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started. I worked there. I got married there, and then I eventually moved down here in the 70s. I was working for IBM.
Mm-hmm.
I got hired on IBM, and IBM gave me the opportunity to move down here to Nashville, which I'm eternally grateful for. John Carlos.
Yeah, I was thinking Tommy Smith. It was Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Yeah.
Tommy Smith and John Carlos. That's what I was thinking.
I'm sorry, man. I got them senior moments.
Right. So you were racing against John Carlos, man. Wow.
Well, it wasn't no race. It wasn't no race. But he was city champ.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. We ran into Armories on 168th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that boy dusted me. I bet you. Yeah, but he was city champ. That was, I don't know, 60 something. I don't know.
That's fascinating. So you're in the Bronx. There's I would imagine in that time frame, like there's not a lot of opportunities for black kids to be swimming and learning about water. So how did you get interested in water?
Well, with my partners, man, we'd go to the different swimming pools. I'm a self-taught swimmer, and I'm not a great swimmer, right? But I was self-taught. So all my partners were outdoors. We was outdoor guys, man. We go to the beaches to go to swimming, So we'd go to this pool. Well, there's a pool called High Bridge, and that's up in Manhattan. I'd go there a couple of times, but the pool we'd go to Crotona, man. It was like a self-taught thing.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were not outdoors people. My father, I remember he used to tell me if it was more than a bathtub full, he wasn't getting in it. Right. And my mother, and who is, who I admire the most, who just passed away. She was 101 years old.
Wow.
Right. My mother didn't like the outdoors. She always alludes to somebody pushing her in the pool and her hair got wet, and that was it. So I didn't have I didn't get that from my parents. And we'd go on picnics, that kind of thing, but nothing, no swimming events or anything like that. But my partners, man, all the guys I grew up with, not all of them, some of them, they could swim. And I became self-taught. And we used to do everything outdoors. We used to go outdoors, man. It's not like the city now where people just, you can't go outside. You can't do this. You can't do that. We didn't have those restrictions, man. So, we'd go. All right.
Gotcha.
Hop the train. I never paid for the subway.
You can't be a New Yorker and not have that experience.
Nah, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah. Listen for that train to come. Gone.
So
we didn't have no money. I had no money. And subway was only 15 cents, 35 cents then.
I mean, money was different back then. So
yeah. I mean, so that's kind of my group of friends. We weren't bad guys. They're pretty good guys, and unfortunately, they're all dead.
Man.
But yeah, so that's kind of my kind of childhood. I used to ride bikes, and that's all kind of good stuff. I remember my sister used to say, "Do you live here?" Because I was always gone. I was out in the streets, man, enjoying myself.
It kind of makes sense now, like you're traveling all over the world and going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Even in New York, I was organizing different things, and just I revolving around the outdoors.
Yeah. So if we fast forward just a little bit, you're enjoying swimming, the outdoors, and then like later on into your life, you kind of get an interest for scuba diving. So what do you remember what it was that kind of made you think like, yo, I want to do this, or what happened?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you the story. So, you have to go back. So, moving here to Nashville's not different than DC. Than New York. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
My children were athletes, right, and they still are somewhat. And if so, I was very supportive of them, right? But if I was living in the city, I couldn't have done what I did here, right? I used to take them to every practice, right?
Hmm.
I wouldn't miss any of the games, right? And the games used to be on the weekdays and the practice on the weekdays. Now the games on the weekends I wouldn't miss. I couldn't do that in the city, man. I work downtown, right?
Hmm.
So, I can't leave downtown, come up, take them to practice, right? Because my boss wouldn't have that. So bottom line, I moved to Nashville and I get this freedom, right? So I was able to take my children um, to all practices and everything. So basically, I never missed a game or practice all through the years that they were through high school. When they left to go to college, and then I didn't have any choice, and I couldn't see them. But that instilled in me. So I'm working with young people, right? And then in 1990. Right. Tennessee State University, which is an HBCU, is right. I live right down the street from Fisk University. Yeah.
Ah.
Reader's Fisk is an HBCU. I live 2 blocks from Fisk,
Hmm.
all right, which is one of the oldest HBCUs. And then I live about a mile from Tennessee State University,
Mm.
which is another HBCU,
Right.
right? And then Meharry University, Meharry College is not a university. It's right down the street. So Meharry, if you did, for your readers don't know, has trained a lot of the Black doctors and dentists. Of course, Fisk, as you know, is a great university. But the point is, so I used to go to Tennessee State University to play racquetball. Right back in New York, I was a handball player. I played paddleball. I played whatever sport was to be played. I played it. Right, but here in Nashville, they don't have any handball courts, right, or paddleball courts.
Hmm.
So I started playing racquetball, right, at State. And State had racquetball courts that we could play for free. So we so we played, 2, 3 times a week, right? And then the racquetball course at Tennessee State University overlooks the pool, right?
Hmm.
It's built that way, right? But you could walk to the end of the hall, and there was a plexiglass or glass, and you could look out and you could see the pool, maybe 100 feet down.
Hmm.
So in between games, I go to the end of the pool and I look, and there's this guy coming out of the pool with this tank on his back, right? And I looked a little closer, and it was a friend of mine. So I run downstairs, man, right? And his name is Ron Wooding. Bless his heart, he just passed away. I said, Ron, what are you doing, man? He said, man, I'm learning how to scuba dive. I said, get out of here. And then right behind him came his son, Ron Jr. So Ron Jr. is about 17, and my son is about 16,
Hmm.
right? And if you know anything about teenagers, you haven't gone through that yet. You're going to lose them teenagers to either boys or girls. I'm telling you, right? So I was losing my younger son to girls,
Hmm.
but it's okay, right? But so Ron said, man, and it's a good way for me and my son to bond. I said, get out of here. So and then right behind him came the instructor because he came out with a chain, and he's black.
Mm.
So that's it. So I talked to his name was Gandhi, and he used the nickname Gandhi. I said, so they introduced me. I said, man, can I do this? He said, yeah, man, you can join the next class. I said, get out of here. So I called my son, Kenneth, he's a junior. I said, Kenny, you want to learn how to scuba dive? He said, yeah, Dad. So that's how it started, right?
Hmm.
So I joined the next class, and that was 1990. I think it was 1990. I joined the next class, and the rest is history. I fell in love with it. Unfortunately, my oldest son didn't, but that's okay.
Hmm.
And the rest is kind of history-wise. And it took me to this next stage that I'm at now.
Now, I know you're part of the National Association of Black Scuba Divers,
I am.
and I know that scuba diving is mostly white. So did you have like certain experiences, as a black scuba diver?
Oh, absolutely. Racism don't skip nothing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It don't miss nothing. So before I found out about NABS, right, National Association of Black Scuba Divers, and so I go diving, man. I go diving. So I'm not too far from Panama City, right? Maybe 7 hours, and I'd go, right? But I'd go by myself, right? Because I didn't know anybody here that dove. And I'd get on a boat. And so in diving, if you go to a boat and you don't know anybody, they'll hook you up with someone, and because you can't dive alone. You dive with a buddy, right? Right. That's the number one rule. So, but nobody wanted to buddy up with me. Right. So, I didn't attribute it to racism, because I grew up in New York, man. I don't remember a lot of racism growing up in New York. You know what I'm saying? Now, it's kind of subtle, but growing up in New York, even in the South, I experienced a little bit. But bottom line, I was on the boat, then nobody would buddy up with me. And then I kind of figured it out after a while. So I would have to go with called a dive master. You always have a dive master on the boat, and he would go with me, who would dive. I wasn't a great diver at the time. So my assumption is that A, maybe because I was black, B, we're not known as the best swimmers, and probably ain't known as the best divers. So that was the only experience. It happened a couple of times, right? Until I found NABS, right? I wasn't getting disillusioned, but there's a gentleman who co-founded NABS. His name is Dr. Jose Jones. He's getting up there in age, but if you can interview him, I suggest you do.
Okay.
Right. He is the co-founder of NABS. He's a marine biologist. And he is truly my inspiration. Truly. And so I don't remember exactly how I met him. I might have called up, and then he was just, telling me about the organization. So I joined NABS, and again, the rest is history. So NABS brought all these black divers together. So the purpose of NABS was to find as many divers as they could, black divers as they could, because the fallacy is, hey, black people don't dive. There's none of y'all, right? But NABS was able to bring, we are 5,000 strong. We're like the National Brotherhood of Skiers. I don't know if you know anything about them, right?
You put me on right now, man. I got some research.
So what you have to do is find. His name is Art Clay. He's the co-founder of NBS, National Brotherhood of Skiers. They are the largest social organization in this country, black or white. Right, wow. And they got more members than NABS does. So we're out there. Right. But so I don't ski, but I do that. So my point to all that is, so I found NABS, met Dr. Jones, and he inspired me. So and this is before Facebook and somewhat the internet. Right. In fact, the internet wasn't even started then, I don't think. But we were able to meet through Dr. Jones people here in Tennessee who dove. So NABS wanted people to start clubs in their location. So they had clubs all over the place. We had. So I just told you, there's a club in New York, AVSC, Aquatic Voyager Scuba Club, located in Long Island. Good friend of mine, Norm Bahaman, and his wife. In fact, Judy Bahaman is the president. You need to call them. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So she's the president. Now I just talked to her the other day. So there's clubs all around the country, all around the world now, because of how big NABS is. Right. And so we had a club here in Tennessee called Tennessee Association of Black Scuba Divers, inspired by Dr. Jones. Right. So I was one of the founding members. I wasn't a co-founder of that. There was 11 of us that co-founded, but we don't exist anymore. Right. Because, we've gotten older, so they don't have that juice anymore. Right. And there was a club in Memphis, the clubs all around the world. Right. And so Dr. Jones, it was inspirational in doing all that, right? And brought all these folks together. So the National Brotherhood of Skiers has a summit every year in wherever they go. And they'll go, I don't know, Aspen or wherever. And they bring all these black skiers together. So NABS has the same thing. They have an annual summit. It's the first weekend in November, right? Where all these black divers come together, right? And we go to many different countries, and we freak them out. Right? So where all these black divers come from, right? And so there are, yeah. So Dr. Jones, as I said, was a truly inspirational, and he still inspires me. He's on the board of Diving with a Purpose, and yeah.
That is amazing, man. So you're doing all this scuba diving, and then somehow you run into this archaeologist named Brenda Lansendorf, right?
That ain't how that goes.
So walk us through that, and then
I'm gonna have to walk you through that one, right? So now I'm diving, man. And I'm diving 100 dives a year, man. I done fell in love with this thing, right? They're taking all my money. Diving is not cheap. Diving is like golf or any other sport. It ain't cheap, right? And
oh,
but
100 dives. Like, what are you like? I know you say you get bored with diving. Like, what are you seeing down there? That's like, yo, I gotta come back. Like, I gotta be back here. Like,
well, we can get to that. We can get to that. We can get to that. But just hold that question. So
Dr. Brenda.
About Brenda. Okay, so I'm diving 100 times a year, and all over the world. But after a while, it can get quite boring, right? Because a reef in the U.S. looks like a reef at the Red Sea. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And unless you look at the camaraderie kind of thing, especially when you're diving that much,
right?
There's not always another experience when you're diving, right? You might see something unusual, but technically it's always the same diving, right? Bottom line. So as I'm diving, I'm meeting new friends and getting more involved with NAVS. NAVS makes me the Southern Regional Rep. So as part of the regional rep, I confer with all the Southern states, right? And what my job was to tell the leaders of the different clubs what the board had said, what the board is talking about. So I was a liaison between the board and the clubs, and that's what I used to do. So in 2000, so we're gonna have to fast forward to 2003. So I'm diving and got all these friends, right? And I'm Southern Regional Rep. So I get a call from a young lady. Her name is Cluna Eberell, who's producing a documentary. Could you see that?
Yes, sir. The Guerrero Project.
Right. Producing a documentary called the Guerrero Project. Right. And she says to me, Mr. Stewart, do you know any black divers? I said, do I know any black divers? I'm the regional rep for that. What are you talking about? So so I said, she said, I want to interview some black divers for my documentary called The Guerrero Project.
Right.
I said, cool. So I sent out an email stating that fact, right? And so email is getting kind of big. This is 2003, 2002. So it's getting big, right? That's the way I can communicate with everybody. So the bottom line, I sent out an email. And, can anybody go down and be interviewed for this documentary? And then, so we had a very good friends of mine who were able to go. Eric Denson, Golden Singleton, Rod Singleton, 6 or 7 people went down and interviewed. I could not go because it was during the time of the NABS president's meeting. I didn't go. And the president's meeting was in New York, so I couldn't go. All right. So fast forward, she starts interviewing us, but I stay in contact with her, and say, what's going on with this? And then in the interim, I'm learning about this slave ship. So I'm not a history buff. I was not a history buff, right? Let me be honest with you. Right. I am not an intellectual, right? And and I was not, but I've become somewhat of one. And I've just, over the last 20 years, I've learned about the diaspora, right? To be honest with you, because I'm in New York. They don't teach none of that in school in New York.
Yes, sir. We're trying to change that, but yes, sir.
Right? The only person I knew about in high school was George Washington Carver. That's the truth.
Yo, that's facts. I mean, to this day.
That's facts.
Yep.
And my parents didn't teach it. So if you're not taught at home, you're not taught at school, and my friends don't know nothing about it. We never learned about history, So I was not a history buff, right? So the bottom line is, but I learned about the Guerrero. And for your friends who don't believe in slavery, existed, there's a book called Slave Ship Guerrero, right? Written by a European now. If you don't believe black scholars, this is a European scholar, Gail Swans, Wonderful lady. She wrote a detailed book about the slave ship girl. She followed it. She learned about it. I don't remember how she learned about it, but then it intrigued her so much. She went bankrupt writing this book,
Wow.
right? And she followed the captive Africans from the time, well, from the time she learned about it all the way back to where they went. So let me give you a quick story of the girl for you guys who don't believe in slavery. Read the book, right? And so what happened was in 1861, the girl, let's go back. 1807, hope that your viewers may know, slavery was abolished by the English, but it was not abolished in this country. Did y'all know that? Probably not. If you don't
People don't
believe
know
me.
that. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Because slavery, because the Civil War was because of slavery. Or
Right.
you don't believe that either, right? Some people don't believe it. Oh, don't get me started, man. So, and so the British was determined to try to stop the slave trade. So they had, vessels in the Caribbean, patrolling the Caribbean and trying to intercept slavers. Right? They were successful, but not as successful as they could have been. Bottom line is, so there's a British warship called Nimitz. Now this is 1827, 20 years after the abolition of slavery. In 1827, there's a British ship called the Nimble, and it's in the Caribbean, right? And it spots the Guerrero, right? And he tries to flag the girl down, and subsequently the girl takes off, and they chase all night, and the girl runs aground in what we think is Key Biscayne National Park. There was 561 captive Africans on board. 41 of them died that night, and the rest were either captured and enslaved in Cuba, or they were sent back to Liberia. Not back. They were sent to Liberia because they were never from Liberia. That was a British. That was a state that the U.S. started in Africa, a country. So they went to Liberia. So we know through Gail Swanson's efforts, we know everything about that ship, right? And she even went to Liberia and found some of the descendants.
Wow.
Right? She went to Britain, who keeps good records.
Yes, sir.
Right? And found out about the Nimble and the girl. So bottom line, so she wrote that book. So it's a comprehensive book on the slave ship girl, right? For your readers, if they want a copy of it, I think it still may be on Amazon. The Guerrero Project is on Amazon. If you want to watch it, it's a good thing. So
Yes, sir.
bottom line was, so over the year after the film, I stayed in contact with Kruna. I said, listen, so why don't we have the debut screening here in Nashville? And we had the screening here in Nashville, right? The premiere, so to speak,
right?
Of the Guerrero Project, and it was good. It was long at that time. It was an hour and a half. That's long, but that's when I finally saw everything. That's when I finally saw about the Guerrero, right, and kind of history wise. But in the screening, in the documentary, the star of the documentary is a young lady named Brenda Lazendorf. At that time, Brenda Lazendorf was the park archaeologist at Biscayne National Park, right? So all the participants that was in that movie came to Nashville, except her. For whatever reason, I never knew. I can't even remember why she didn't come. She didn't come. All right. So now I'm very much intrigued. Right. So that following summer, as you know, as I told you, I teach young people how to dive. I said, listen, let's go on down to the Keys. Right. We drove down. I said, let's go meet this woman. So I go to Biscayne National Park, and we meet Brenda. Truly, now Brenda is a European, right? But I think she got some sister in her, right? But we became immediate friends. I mean, so she had this infectious personality, and she gets to talk and stuff like that. So we talk for about an hour or so, and then we leave. No, then we depart. But before I leave, she says to me, Ken, as a diver, I talked to you earlier, you can't dive alone. You got to dive with a partner, right? And I have all these shipwrecks in the park. So the archaeologist in Biscayne National Park, right, has to document, or they are congressionally mandated to survey the ships in the park every year. It's impossible for one person to do it. It's impossible for two people to do it. So bottom line, she said to me, as a diver, I can't dive alone. I need some help. All right. So I didn't say nothing to her. I didn't think anything about it. I mean, I did think about it. I went back home. I sent out another email. Tired of the same old diving. Let's dive with a purpose. And that's how it started. Right. So over the next 6 months, Brenda and I got together and we worked on a curriculum for diving with a purpose. And then it started that next year. We had about 8 participants. 3 of them were engineers: Eric Denson, Rod Singleton, and Early Thornton. They were engineers, right? And the reason why I say that is because engineers have different mindsets than most of us, and they are very much into details and stuff like that. So in maritime archaeology, it's very detailed, right? So the part of the course, without going into all the details of what it entails, right? You have to draw these drawings, and you have to do measurements, and it's very meticulous, right? And everybody can't do that. Everybody can't do that. So after the first meeting, Brenda said, I love this, right? So DWP started. So we started with 3, and every year we got bigger and bigger. And then so Brenda always said that I know where the Guerrero lay. I just told you, we know everything about that ship, but where it is. And she said, I know where it lay. And when you guys get proficient enough, right, that we can do a detail, it's called a composite drawing. So we do composite drawings on any ship that we document, right? Without destroying artifacts and anything like that, I will take you to the site of the Guerrero. So that was an incentive for a lot of people to join and to come down to take the course. The course is a 1-week course. Starts on a Sunday, ends on a Sunday. There's classroom and diving involved, and we teach you the basic steps, the basic tenets of maritime archaeology. When you finish our course, you are not an archaeologist. You're an archaeologist advocate, right? But you will learn a lot of the skills that archaeologists use to document a shipwreck, and it's simple as that. And it's called institute drawing and trilateration mapping. I ain't going to go into what to do, but those are the 2 things you learn, and then you learn how to put it on a site map, a finished site map. So she said that, man. So people would come, man. So every year we was going. We was having almost 2 sessions a year, right? We started. We having in April. We'd have them back to back, April, right? And so technically you could do 20 people at a time, right? But we'd have 10, 12, 15 people each time. And then we did this for about 8, 9 years. Right. So in 2008, right, we're getting off the boat, and Brenda's coughing. I'm like, what's going on? What is this? So I said, listen, girl, you need to go ahead and that checked out. Now, this is like my sister now. I said, you need to go ahead and that checked out. And she said, I will, Ken. I will. You know how they do. But bottom line, in October, she calls me, and she finally got it checked out, and she's got stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh, man.
Okay. Man. So it would get to the point, I'm trying to be real considerate,
Right.
And I never did ask her where the Guerrero was. I should have, but I didn't, because I was trying to be considerate of her and what she was going through. So the bottom line is, we would do our survey. We'd have our missions. We call them missions every April. At that time, 2009. So 2009, I get a call that I need to come because she doesn't have lung, and it's just coincidental. The mission that we were doing was that week. So this is April 12th. April 12th, I get there. It's a Saturday. I go to she's in hospice now, and I go to the hospital she's at with the hospice care. And when I get there, another very good friend of mine is Audrey Peterman is there, and she's talking to her and rubbing her hand, and she kind of says to her, "Hey, Ken is here," and she kind of lights up, but she can't talk, right? So I stayed with her that night, but I couldn't go Sunday because I'm the program administrator, so I had to be there for the administration part of DWP. That was Sunday, and then Monday the program really starts with classroom and stuff like that, right? But Monday night I get a bad feeling. All right, so I said, let me go. So I sit with her all night, right? Just talking to her, telling her what's happening. We got all these people here, right? And I leave. And then Tuesday is a dive day. So we dive. The way the program works, you have academics on Monday, you dive Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, you come back, have academics again. And Friday, you go out diving again. And then Saturday, it's graduation, you come home. So Tuesday morning, this has never happened. This is our 9th year, and this has never happened. We get to the dock, and the captain said, we can't go out today. Right? Winds are too high. This is the first time that's ever happened. Never happened before. And we've had 50 dives right in, right? So we don't go out. So I said to them, so we're in Biscayne National Park, and I said to them, listen, there's a theater. Let's go watch the Guerrero Project, right? For folks that had never seen it. So we went to the theater, watched the Guerrero Project, right? And at 11:15, I get a call that she passes.
Wow.
Right. So that week was a tribute to very emotional, right? But unfortunately, if she knew where the Guerrero was, she took it to the grave with her. We are still looking for that ship. So now she's passes, and they get a new archaeologist, and he's going through her things, and he says, Ken, if she knew where it was, she didn't write it down. Okay, so so that's kind of where we are. But so things have been happening, things have been in place where we still looking at it. If you see my T-shirt, my hoodie here, it's Dive with a Purpose, says the search for the Guerrero. Isn't that what it says?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I need to go back and let your listeners know. So while we're doing the course with Brenda, as we talked earlier, I have a group here called Tennessee Aquatic Project. We're here locally, where I teach young people how to dive. Simple as that. And so one year I said to myself, my kids can dive. My kids can dive. I said I wonder if they could do this program. So I brought 2 of them. Now, Brenda's still alive now. I brought 2 of them to the program, and they are master divers, right? And they did better than the adults.
Wow.
And Brenda loved it. Like, she loved children, man. She said, Ken, you need to keep this up, bring them, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I said, listen, we got it. So I brought young people. This is 2007, 2006, 2007, and I brought in 2008. So I brought young people there to do the DWP program. Now, you have to remember that these are 16 and 7-year-olds. I bet you ain't nobody in DWP is under 40. So, you got these young people and you got these adults, and for a little while, they'll talk to each other. But after a while, there's nothing for them to talk about. So the preceding years, I didn't bring any young people, right? And then in 2010, I'm on the slave ship, and your daughter asked me earlier about artifacts or what was something I brought up. Right? So I am on a slave ship in South Africa called the San Jose. Now, at that time, they hadn't truly identified it yet. It has been identified as the San Jose, but I was on that site, right? And a nail was brought up from that site. Like, I have photographs of it, right? And so something must have happened, right? Because I get another one of my epiphanies, right? And I talked to this gentleman named Dave Conlon, who is the chief of the Submerged Resource Center of the National Park Service, and another young lady named Justin Benanti, who's an archaeologist, and she's a New Yorker. And we're sitting there. I said, look, I want to start a youth diving with a purpose program. So it's been, because I've already previously brought young people.
Right.
And I want to start one. So Dave Conlon, who works, like I said, he works for the National Park. He said, I'll get you some seed money. And he did. And that's how YWP started. And Our only problem was to be able to find young people who qualify, because to do any of the DW programs, you have to have a minimum of 25 dives.
Mhm.
Right. So it ain't like if you go get certified that you could do this program. No, you have to have experience.
Mhm.
And it's difficult for young people. It's difficult for young people. But I found a school in New York called the Harbor School,
Hmm.
all right, which is on Governor's Island, which just has a scuba program, a 4-year scuba program. So I was the first 2 years I was able to recruit students from the Harbor School to join the Youth Diving with a Purpose program. So the YWP program is the same as adults, except it happens in July, right?
Gotcha.
Right. And so this is our 11th year of YWP. But in the interim, we still go looking for the Guerrero.
Gotcha.
So this past year, um, we filmed this past year. I brought the creme of the divers. Now you have to remember we've been doing YWP for 11 years. So I said, listen, we're gonna do another search, but I need my best.
Mhm.
So I bring the best divers that we've had. There's 13 of them, right? And these are the best, right? And I call them the creme de la creme. And we did a week-long search for the Guerrero again.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did we find it? No. So we've been searching and searching and searching. So how do we know where the Guerrero is? I told you that Gail Swanson's
Mhm.
book, and in it they think it's in what we call Carey's Fork Reef in Biscayne National Park.
Mhm.
It's just a reef in the park, right? So we're thinking that, so that's where we've been searching.
Right.
So the National Park Service commissioned a complete survey of the southern end of Biscayne National Park, a complete survey, right? So we can find this ship, right? So it's been going on for 6 years. So this year, or last year, right, they found 700 anomalies. What's an anomaly, right? What they do? They do side scan sonar. Side scan sonar is an electronic device that can detect anomalies at the bottom of the ocean, but it can't tell you what it is, right? And they put it on a graph, right? And it'll pinpoint where it is. It can tell you everything about, not everything, but it can tell you there's something there, but it can't tell you what it is. And you have to physically go down and look,
Mm.
right? You can either what we call snorkel it, or you can dive. But if it's like less than 10 feet of water, you can snorkel and go look at it, determine. So it could be tires that people have thrown down. It could be lobster traps, or it could be something significant.
Mm.
So over the last 5 years, it was 700 anomalies. Last year, they had narrowed it down to 80. So my thinking was that we could do this final 80, right, and say, yeah, it's there, or it's not there. But we were not able to do 80. It's not easy to to look at each artifact at the time we only had a week.
Mhm.
It's very difficult. So we were only able to do 40. So it's 40 more. So
Almost there. Almost there.
almost halfway
Uh,
there.
Other than the Guerrero, there are other ships that you guys have explored, other shipwrecks. And to me, I'm thinking like, you're navigating through a piece of history that most people have not in the world. And this is the most, devastating atrocities I think done to humans in the history
Absolutely.
of humanity. Right.
Absolutely.
So I'm guessing that there's some emotion and spiritual connection that might come along with doing
Absolutely.
this type of
Absolutely.
work. So
Absolutely.
can you talk about like what it has been for you and some of the people that are a part of this in regards to, pretty much discovering some new pieces of Black history and also kind of putting some things together that we haven't learned about in ever pretty much.
Well, it goes back to, whether we want to know history, and like my mother's 101. And I would ask her about, the family. She said, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about, so a lot of it, some of that history that could have been voiced, a lot of times our ancestors, and I'm talking about my mother, they don't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to be talked about. Again, if your listeners are listening, and if you're watching and listening to the news, right? History is trying to be repeat itself, right? And they're doing it in a different way, right? They are busing migrants up and down. That's another part of the diaspora, they're not coming here voluntarily. Up in New York,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right? A lot of them are not coming. So that's another diaspora, right? Just a modern day one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my point to all that is it is a truly emotional, right? The very first slave ship that was ever documented is called, and like I said, you need to interview Dr. Jose Jones, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll tell you how to do. How to get in touch with him. But he did the Henrietta Marie. Okay. So for the readers who don't know about the Henrietta Marie, okay, there's a gentleman named Mel Fisher. Mel Fisher was the most well-known salvager ever, probably. And so and in the documentary, the Guerrero Project,
Mm-hmm.
it's not only a story of the Guerrero, but it's a story of the relationship or the differences of views between archaeologists and salvagers, right? And prior to this documentary, I was on the side of the salvagers because I want to see it, man. Bring it up so we can see it. But salvagers go about it a different way, right? They will destroy the ocean to get to whatever they want, as opposed to, finding an easier way to bring it up. They don't care, right? And so thus everything gets destroyed. Not on the ocean. I'm an advocate of the oceans, right? So things get so the bottom line was the most famous was Mel Fisher. Mel Fisher was looking for a Spanish galleon. Spanish galleon is called the Atocha. He spent his entire life looking for it, right? And in 1982, I don't remember exactly, he found it, right? And to this date, they brought up almost $500 million in gold and silver, right?
Wow.
Yeah. But again, he found this ship called the Henrietta Marie, right? And they didn't know what it was, but they knew it was a slave ship, and they knew there was nothing on it of value to him, so he didn't do anything with it. But one of his captains, a couple years later, went back, right? Again, as your daughter was alluding to, has anybody found something of valuable? What they do is they find the ship's bell, and the bell says Henrietta Marie, right?
Wow.
And so, again, they go back to England because the English did good records, right?
Yes,
And they
sir.
found out the history of the Henrietta Marie. But they find out the Henrietta Marie had no captive Africans on his voyage back. It had dropped off the captive Africans in Cuba and was on its way back to England, and it got into a storm, right? And sunk. So NABS, National Association of Black Scuba Divers, got wind of it through a gentleman named Corey Malcolm, who is no longer the archaeologist at Mel Fisher. He has moved on, but he presented to them, and they decided to place, not only to go dive the ship, but place a monument. There's a monument there at the site
Right.
of the Henrietta Marie. I'm sorry, at the site of the Henrietta Marie, right? All right. So now we've arranged several missions. Occasionally we go out there and we clean the monument, and you get a chance to pay homage to your ancestors. I did a documentary where I took young people on a voyage, see if they learned about the history, and then we ended the voyage with a dive on the Henrietta Marie. Right? So at the site now is the monument, and there's some beads there. There's a cannon there, right? But the hull of the ship is covered in sand. That's how you preserve it, right? So there's not a lot there now. But a lot of people go for the spiritual aspect of it, because it is even though there's no captive Africans on there at the time, it is an artifact, a huge artifact of what our ancestors went through. Was good. So you get a sense of feeling, right? There's a gentleman, Kamal Siddiqui, who was the lead instructor with DWP. He's been on more slave wrecks than I have. Right? I've only been on 3. He's been on 5. There's only been 5, and I think he's been on all 5 of them. And he'll tell you about the spiritual connection. I don't know if you really just know. The last one that was just found, it's called the Catilda.
Yes, sir.
It's in Mobile, right? Which we're a big part of. In fact, there's an article, we're going to write an article about it next month. But my point to all that is, there is a spiritual feeling that comes out of it. Maybe there's a connection to your ancestors. If you have that kind of imagination, if you don't, it's just another dive. Right? It's a spiritual connection to our ancestors and what they've gone through and what we have gone through and what we continue to go through.
Yes, sir. I know you just talked about the Quotilda. A lot of people might not be familiar with that one, but that is the last known ship to have come back here, as far as people know, and there are still descendants here from the Quotilda.
In Africa town, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what have you guys learned about the Quotilda?
Well, I'm not a big part of that, but I can tell you. So a couple of things we're doing with the descendants and in Africa town. That the folks down there are very vocal about keeping the history. And it's a wonderful, it's a great. I don't know if anybody saw. There's another documentary on Netflix called The Descendants, which features Kamal Siddiqui. And it talks about the Africa town and what they went through or what they're going through. So we continue to play a part in that. We're teaching the young people there to dive, scuba dive, so they can actually go and dive the Quotilda, right? You can't. So and to be a part and research the history. So they've been very welcoming, right? The descendants of, and so it's in Mobile, Alabama. For your listeners, you don't know anything about it, the Quotilda was supposedly the last slave ship. We're not 1,000% sure, but they say it is. And there was a white gentleman, a European gentleman, so to speak. European, that's what we call him now. There was a European gentleman who placed a bet that he could bring a certain amount of Africans, because this is not 18, this is after the Civil War, right? That he could bring these captive Africans and sneak them into the Americas without being found. And he did. And then, but some of the descendants are still there in Mobile in Africa Town. They call it Africa Town. It's actually a city near Mobile. And subsequently what he did was he burnt the boat, but in the harbor somewhere. So I haven't been to the site. So they burned the boat, but it didn't fully burn. So a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, DWP along with Search found the wreck. Right? They were able to, through the process of archaeology, determine that it is a Quotilda. Oh, there's an effort there. The problem is they're talking about to preserve the wreck. The African town people want to bring the wreck up and put it in a museum, right? But that's millions of dollars, right? So they haven't made a decision, as far as I know, on what to do with the ship. But the record's there.
Right. Gotcha. All right. So in Mozambique, I know you guys do a lot of work too, like just connecting with different people in the continent and their experiences, learning their experience and their viewpoints and things like that. And in Mozambique, you guys found someone that asked you to take a basket and put it.
Okay. So that it has to do with the San Jose.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So again, I wasn't there, right? But I can tell you what happened. Kamal Siddiqui, who you probably need to interview.
You giving me a list, man. I got a lot of homework.
and Kamal is you really, I don't know what you're doing for Black History Month, but you need to see if you can get him. You can get him. You have to tell me.
Yes, it's done. It's done. Yep.
Yeah. So Kamal was a big part of that. So again, I was telling you, I was on the wreck of San Jose. It's pronounced differently, but that's the only way I can pronounce it. Right. But when I was there, it was not, they hadn't identified it, but now they have identified it. And it's the ship that's in the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. And for your listeners, for your viewers, my picture's in there also.
Ooh. Making history, yes, sir.
Making history, yeah. So I'm on level 2. Right, you'll see me, and I'm surrounded by all these beautiful ladies. And then I'm gonna give you a little backdrop on it just quickly. And I know I'm getting off topic here.
No, this is important. This is important.
My photograph is in there, so it's just me and all these women. That's just like 8 women, right? And the reason why the photograph is there, the reason why the photograph was taking place, I was on a search for the Guerrero again. This is another one of our searches. We were documenting a site. And I'm sitting on the back of this boat. I said, man, look at all these dynamic women I got here, ladies, sisters. So I said, let's go take this photograph. So we go to the front of the boat. A partner of mine, he's photographing. His name is Vandal Rogers. He is the professor at Fisk University. He just happened to be on there. I said, Vandal, take this photograph. So it's me and I think it's 8 of us, 8 ladies. And so I don't know so I don't even know how the museum got the photograph, right? But 2 years later, I get a call from a friend of mine, right? And she said, Ken, did you know your photograph was in this museum? I said no. So that's my only claim to fame. So I brag about that all the time. But yes, that picture has done a lot for the Diving with a Purpose. Not only that, it's an exhibit about DWP on level 2 in the museum. I don't, so after 10 years, they'll take it down. So I know we're getting to that point where it's going to come down, because I don't know, the museum is like in this 8th year, maybe.
Right.
But after 10 years, it'll come down. So
I definitely I haven't been there yet. I gotta go there just
but go
definitely
next year,
for that.
You ain't gonna see it.
Yes,
But
sir.
I wish but I could. But yeah, so it's in there. So it does talk about the San Jose. In fact, if you go all the way down to the bottom, when they talk about slavery, the San Jose is featured. Okay.
And
so
yeah,
go ahead. They researched the San Jose and find out that it started in Upper Mozambique. So if you look at that side of Africa, right, when they were doing the African Diaspora, the 400 years of enslavement that some of your readers don't believe in, right? It started in Mozambique, right, and then would go around, come down, and then go around the Cape and make its way to where its destination in the Caribbean, Barbados. I don't know where they were going, right? But when they were coming down to the Cape, right, I don't know, you ever been to South Africa?
Not yet. It's on the bucket list.
Okay, so this is it's in Cape Town, right? And if you ever go, right, you can go to the top. There's a mountain called Table Mountain. You can go to the top of Table Mountain, and you can actually see you can't see the slave ship, but you can see where it's sunk, and it's in a cove, right? So the assumption is that the ship went into the cove to avoid a storm. But that area is rocky, so it must have been thrown up against the rocks, and a lot of them died. I don't remember the exact figure, right? But a lot of them died at that site, because even though they could have, if you could swim, you could probably swim the shore. It is a very volatile area, extremely volatile, because of the rocks and the ocean and the currents. But they brought it to the attention of the folks in Mozambique that's where the ship came from. And so I can't remember the name of the tribe. Again, you have to get Kamau on there, right? But the leaders of the tribe wanted they brought some dirt, and they wanted to bring it down to the site of where the San Jose, so their ancestors could find a new beginning, so to speak. I don't know, I don't know words that you want to say, but yeah, that was a big thing. So they did that with the Smithsonian and the local tribe up there in Mozambique. So it was a big ceremony. Yeah. Again, Kamau can tell you a lot more about that, because I was not a part of that.
Yeah, that is one of those emotional moments.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That kind of work.
And for those of us, a lot of us don't have a sense of history. Our children don't. So it doesn't really, it doesn't really come to them. But I give you a good instance. So I tell you, I have a 10th Street Aquatic Project, right?
Yes, sir.
And so we had a meeting one day, and now these are 8 to 18. 8 to 18. So I said, 9/11 was one of the most horrific events ever. And, I looked, and they got these little faces. What are you talking about, Mr. Stewart? Y'all don't know what 9/11 is?
Wow.
So, if you ain't got a sense of 9/11, you sure ain't got no sense about no history. Again, it points to the schools, right? And what our children be taught, and even at home.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree. So obviously this is important, monumental work that you guys all are doing And one of the things that I've heard you mention is that it's important that we do this work. We, as in Black people,
Absolutely.
are the archaeologists, are the swimmers, are the historians, are
Ab-
so.
Absolutely.
Can you touch on that and the importance of us doing it as opposed to other groups?
I heard a saying by the archaeologist, one of the lead archaeologists, he's a European,
Mm-hmm.
that history is told by the winners.
Mm.
And I sat there and thought about it. What does that mean? Does your readers have a sense of that? In other words, if I'm the winner, I can tell the story any way I want because I have dominance over the media,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I can give you examples of that, right? There are many examples of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one that really comes to mind, I don't know if your readers know about, there's a movie called Zulu,
Mm-hmm.
and it tells the story of, of, of European British soldiers. There's only like 11 of them that fought off thousands of Zulus, but it's shown through the lens of the British.
Mm.
And come to find out, it ain't true. How 11 people going to, you know what I'm saying? So again, it points out its history is told by the winners, and it's the same way with us, right? If your viewers are listening, Florida is trying to change history.
Yes, sir.
Not only,
We've covered it.
right? Not only one of the Europeans said, well, slavery was good for them because they learned trades, right? That they use later on, right? Or they don't even want to teach our history in Florida, right? So who's going to tell it? We're going to tell it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to tell the truth, and it's going to be told from our lens, right? And I have some good friends, and they're archaeologists, and I love them most dearly, but they're Europeans, right? Now they can tell the detailed history, but they can't tell the emotional effect of it, right? They can't tell them the effect that it's had on our families. They don't know. They ain't got a clue, right? So again, it's up to us to tell our history. Again, if we don't learn it, it's bound to repeat it. And if y'all not watching, right, we're going to get overwhelmed with it in the next couple of years unless we stand up and tell the story.
Yes, sir. Indeed, indeed. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to get into a quick activity called What's Your Favorite? So you could be real brief, identifying a few of your favorite things.
I mean, my favorite things do what?
So example, favorite country you've been to? You've been all over the world.
Egypt.
Egypt. Any reason?
Even fascinating. Fascinating. And so a lot of people, Egypt is in Africa, y'all.
You gotta say it. You gotta say it twice. You gotta say that twice.
Right? Even though they don't want to admit it, but Egypt is in Africa. Just a fascinating history, man. And again, history. Cleopatra. You watch the movie Cleopatra, right? And y'all know Nefertari was black. You wouldn't know it through that movie. Now Cleopatra wasn't black, right? But most of the Egyptians were black.
Yes, sir.
Right, but you don't see that portrayed in any movies, right? And if you look at a lot of the Egyptians, like you go to Cairo, right? Cairo was dominated by the European countries. So you have, what the Europeans do, right? They take our women, you know how they do.
Yes, sir.
But it's the same thing in Egypt. So you got this hodgepodge of skin colors, right? But it's still a great city. So I went down. So I spent 2 weeks there with my youngest son and a group of black divers. I took nabs and went there. And this is why my favorite country, because it has a tremendous history, right? And when you get this, man, all these people are black, right? But then we went down so we did a Nile tour, right? And so, the Nile goes from south to north. It don't go north-south, right? So you have to go up the Nile, right? But you'll go to all the famous history places like Valley of the Kings, Valley of the Queens, where King Tutankhamun's tomb is. Just amazing history. Loved it. So, but you have to fly into Aswan and get the boat and you go up. So when you get to Aswan, they're all black. I mean, dark skin like me. And they make it very plain that they never intermingled with the Europeans. In fact, one of them looked like my grandfather. I said, "Man, you look like my grandfather," right? But so I fell in love. I fell in the food, uh, and fell in love with the food. And the diving was spectacular.
That's
Best
amazing.
diving I've had ever.
That's
Right
amazing.
now, I'm sure there are other places. I haven't been everywhere,
Mhm.
right? So, but that's my favorite.
I was gonna ask your favorite experience on the water, but it sounds like that would be
It
the
was,
thing.
it was,
Yes, sir.
it
So,
was the
favorite
Red
sea,
Sea.
the Red Sea.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so if you don't, so Egypt, the Red Sea runs adjacent to adjacent to Egypt. So there's two sides. There's the Egyptian side, and then and then there's the Red Sea, and then on the other side, um, I don't know what country it is, but it's not Egypt. And so we stayed in a place called Sham Sheikh, right? And we dove on that other side. We did a supposedly up the mountain. We went up the mountain where supposedly Moses was. So that's a lot of history, and I spent 2 weeks there. And my youngest son went. He was only 12 at the time, and he still has memories of it, and he's 38.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Favorite sea creature you've seen underwater?
At the Red Sea, and it was a nudibranch, right? Which is a nudibranch is I don't know the definite description, but it was red, and it was only about this big, about that big, and it was a night dive, so it was at night, and then I shined my light on it, and it was just floating around. It was like amazing, right? And then we did a night dive there in Egypt, and so there's a difference between night diving and day diving, right? In day diving, you'll see a lot, but in night diving, a lot of the creatures who don't come out in the day come out at night, and so you'll get to see a lot like octopuses and whatever night creatures come out. So it was a nudibranch, and it was a color of flamingo because it was so red, and that was to me that's the thing that stuck out to me.
That's amazing, man. What's your favorite place to dive in the U.S.?
Well, I do a lot of diving in the Keys. I
Florida
spent
Keys.
a lot of time in the Keys.
Mhm.
I spent an inordinate amount of time in the Keys. So the Keys are, I'm not so there are different levels of diving. Some people love cave diving, man. I ain't going to no cave, right? Because, one way in and one way out. But so there's different levels of diving. I'll give you a quick one. At the harbor school, we met a gentleman who had just set the world record for the deepest dive on air on mixed bass. And I don't remember how far, but it was 2,000-3,000 feet. And I'm looking, man, he's got 10 tanks on his back. Then he has stages, right? That he has to have different oxygen levels, right? I mean, different oxygen tanks and so on. Have different tanks, so he can come up. It takes 18 minutes to get down to depth, which is the furthest he can go, and 26 hours to come back.
Wow.
Because you have to what they call decompress at certain. This is all a science. And I said to myself, why? Why? But his premise was, it's like climbing Mount Everest because it's there.
Because it's there. Yep. That's so funny.
That ain't me, right? So I love, so I don't have to go deep. Anything that you want to see is in 50 feet or less. Right. But some people like to go deep, right? The problem with diving is if you go, there's scientific things that you put together so you don't accumulate what they call a nitrogen in your skin. If you don't know, in Alabama just last week, they killed a guy with nitrogen because nitrogen will kill you, right? In its purest form, it'll kill you. Right now, again, you breathe nitrogen every day, but you have oxygen in a combination of two. But if you have just nitrogen, it will kill you. And like I said, they just executed a guy last week with nitrogen in Alabama. Right. So my point to all that is that's how you know how dangerous it is. So if you dive a certain depth, right, you will accumulate too much nitrogen. And if you don't, what we call off gas that nitrogen, right, you can die.
Man.
Right.
Fascinating.
So my point to all that is, what I'm trying to tell you is 50 feet Yeah, you probably don't have to worry about nitrogen in 30 feet.
That makes sense.
Like I was telling you, that's why I teach young people, man. You know, there's nothing down at 100 feet. There ain't nothing down there but trouble.
Good point. Good point. Speaking of young people, what's been, favorite life lesson or gem that anyone has given you so far?
So if you ever get an email from me, at the bottom it says, the problems we've created will not be solved by the minds that created them.
Hmm.
The problems we face, listeners, will not be solved by the minds that created them. And I say that, and all my kids know it. Right? All my kids know it. Because my generation has destroyed this planet. And it will continue to destroy it. If you don't step up and do something. We haven't even talked on coral conservation, which is another big part of our program. Right. But I'm gonna introduce you to another brother. His name is Kramer Wimmer, who's the lead instructor, and you need to talk to him. Right. So it's Kramer, Kamal, and Dr. Jones.
Yes,
Them
sir. We're gonna do a whole series.
We got to do a series.
Yes, sir.
Because these are all interesting things about our community. Our community is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we're trying to save the planet, right? But I say to my young people, I'll tell you, every Saturday, I say the same thing. Well, not every Saturday. I said, I'm teaching you because you're going to save this planet. Because if you don't, there will be no planet.
That is, man.
That's my favorite saying.
Yes, sir. Man, I'm definitely honored to have been able to speak with you today, man. Definitely learned a ton, a lot of information there. The work you're doing is invaluable. You're creating Black history. I'm sure that is why your face is up there, in the African American History Museum, or else, they wouldn't even have you up there. So we already know the kind of work that you're doing, man. I don't know if you ever thought about, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I don't know. I'm 79 years old, all right, soon to be 80. All right. So my tenure is not long for this world. Be honest with yourself.
Wait a minute. Your mom lived to, would you say 102?
I ain't gonna live that long. I don't want to, even though my mother, when she the thing that killed my mother was the pandemic. Where I live at in this house right now, we stayed in this house for 2 years. She was 98 years old. She never left this house for 2 years. Right. And she was the kind of person she loved the New York Times. That was a Bible. Right. And very, very bright, very brilliant. But that, and then it was all downhill after. We both caught COVID together. Mm-hmm. But we got through that. But I don't plan to live that long. But my point to all that is the legacy I want to leave is that, especially for Black men, I'll be honest with you, although I run 3 organizations, 4, right? Mm-hmm. Or I'm a part of. I run DWP, somewhat speaking. I'm the program director, and again, we're going to a succession program, right? Mm-hmm. I run YWP, mm-hmm. Tennessee Aquatic Project, mm-hmm. and another organization we just created called Get Black Outside, which is an organization to get young people outside into the forest. And we've done that. And I just created a lifeguard program here in Tennessee. Man. And people said, well, you need to stop. I said, nah, I tried. But, I just want to see our young people overcome these challenges that they go through. And I just, I was just telling somebody, I don't know how to reach them all. I don't. There's some of them. I'm gonna give you one more example before we leave. Right. So I got a good friend of mine, mm-hmm. right, who teaches scuba. He was in D.C. His name is Ernie Franklin, and so he teaches. So I call. Yeah. So he just got back. He teaches scuba at the Washington D.C. public schools. So he said, these are inner city kids. I ain't gonna tell you what he calls them, but these are inner city kids. All right. So he went to certify him down in Florida just this past week. Mm-hmm. Right. And he said, Ken, our young people, they don't know how to code switch. I said, no, I know. right? So he was saying like they would describe this the equipment, say, yo, Mr. Franken, y'all know what that do, right? You know, but you know, and he had me dying, right? So I said we're gonna do a video called Ghetto Scuba.
Man.
Don't put that in your thing. But my point is, I want my children to succeed, but they make it so hard, you know. And so that's my legacy. So
Yes, sir. I see it, man. And I think like it's amazing, man. We've gotten a chance to just talk to a lot of people that have been making Black history and part of history, and all of them are still doing the work, man. And I think that, you know, now you guys, it's time to pass on the torch so we can start doing the work. And you know, I'm honored to be talking to you and all the amazing things that you're doing still, you know, and this gives me like, I think motivation, because sometimes we think and we have these ideas and we want to do the work and we're like, well, it's not going to work. But
yeah,
you know, these things that you guys are doing have been monumental to the community. And
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And what I find, you know, my young brothers, you know, the ones who are successful are not the givers. They're not. You know who do? And I was. That's what I was telling you about all the programs I started. Maybe you don't put this in your thing either, but 90% of them are women who helped me, right, or who co-founded, because ladies get in their dig and they work. So you are unique, brother, because I admire you, because a lot of brothers ain't doing what you're doing, right? You know,
appreciate it.
sometimes we get caught up in our success or want to be our pursuit of success and money and material things and forget about who got you where you need to be. I heard some young brother who came out of my organization. They said, "Well, you know, I did this all on my own, and he's very successful. You ain't do shit by your excuse me. You ain't do nothing by yourself. Right? You don't get to anywhere without somebody helping and pulling you up." So
Absolutely.
I
Man.
think that's where I would really like to develop, is to get some of our young brothers to come back. I've been doing tap for 28 years, and just now are some of the young brothers who came at the beginning are coming back. Just now, after 28 years.
Mhm.
Right? But the girls, man, they're all excelling, right? And they come back and they help and they do. But the brothers, I don't know. So again, I admire you, my brother.
I appreciate you, man. Likewise. And man, I'm like I said, man, listeners, if you're not inspired, if you didn't learn
Was
anything
this
today.
live?
Yes, sir. What'd you say?
Was this live?
No, it's not live. We'll edit out all the everything that needs to be edited out.
Yeah,
I got you.
Okay.
But yeah, so we are, you know, truly inspired by your work and what you're doing. And listeners, if you are not inspired or if you didn't learn anything today, you check your heart rate, see if your brain is still on. And I don't know what to tell you, man, because I'm ready, man. I'm ready to keep this thing going, man. And again, appreciate what you're doing and making Black history and inspiring the next generation, because I do feel like a lot of older adults kind of give up on the young generation and say like, well, we can't teach them anything. They do this and they do that, but you're doing the work, man. So, you know, I appreciate
You
it.
know, and I totally agree. But when you start meeting some of them, right? You know, a lot of times people in my age group, they don't go out and meet you. I see young people every Saturday, right? And I think what keeps me going is that I do see them every Saturday because they're inspirational, man. You know, just when you think they don't know anything, they'll say, "Well, how'd you know that? Hey, Mr. Stewart, you told us." I said, "Oh, you listening to what I'm telling you?"
You heard something.
I mean, so to your readers or to your listeners, this is not what we do is not in a vacuum. You can join us. You don't have to be specialized, right? And I tell you, go to our website, www.divingwithapurpose.org, and it will tell you, well, take a look at us, right? Subscribe to our newsletter. but it is open to anyone who can learn what we teach them, right? So it's not an exclusive club. Right. And I expect you to join us.
Yes, sir. My daughter is interested, so I got work to do. I got work to do.
Yeah. So I'll introduce you to the AVSC, right? The Black Club there in Long Island, and they can make it happen.
Let's do it. Let's do it, man. I have a lot of homework, but I'm excited about this homework. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
we gotta make it happen for sure.
Make it happen. Man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate having you on. I feel like
Appreciate being on. The bad part about it, you didn't even get the whole story.
Well, we definitely got to bring you back for a part 2 with some of the
There's more stuff going on.
Yeah, we got to bring you back with some of the partners that you mentioned.
Get Kamal. I'll email you their contacts. What you're going to do is you're going to send me an invite, and I will pass it on to them, and they will call you, and then you set up whatever you want.
Perfect, man. Takes a village, man. That's what it's about.
That's right.
Yeah, man. So listeners, definitely check out Diving with a Purpose. Check out what they're doing. If you're in the area, get your kids over there. And if you haven't seen some of the great work that they've been a part of, Smithsonian, National Geographic, Samuel Jackson's documentary. And
Sam's my man,
Yeah.
No, that's a lie. But, we did have an opportunity to hang out with Sam.
Yeah, man. So you guys been everywhere, man. So listeners, you got a lot of homework to do. I got homework to do. Appreciate this part of history that you're developing for us all and creating these new narratives and stories. And again, do your homework. Check out Diving with a Purpose and everything that they're doing. And of course, remember, your mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. If you can think it, you can do it. If you believe in it, you can be it. And if you fight for it, you can have it. The world is yours. This has been your host, Mr. G, and I'll see you next time.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one starve illegal or you had a job.